Have you ever wondered if there's a blueprint for the human mind, a complete map of how reality works? Well, that's pretty much what early Buddhist scholars set out to create with the Abhidharma. They took the Buddhist teachings and systematically organized them into one of the most detailed and profound philosophical systems ever conceived.
So let's kick things off with a pretty wild thought experiment. What if the reality you experience isn't a smooth, continuous movie? What if it's actually more like a film reel made up of billions of individual frames, each one flashing into existence for just a fraction of a second before disappearing forever? That's the kind of radical perspective the Abhidharma is asking us to consider.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to figure out what Abhidharma even is, why they call it the higher teaching. Then, we'll dive into how it deconstructs reality into these basic components called dharmas. After that, we'll explore the absolutely mind-bending idea of a world made of fleeting moments, see how it led to some major debates, and finally, bring it all home by looking at it as a practical guide for our own minds.
Okay, Section 1. What makes Abhidharma the so-called higher teaching? Well, it was a totally new way of doing things. It's a shift from the more narrative, story-based teachings of the Buddha to something much more analytical, almost like a technical, systematic philosophy.
You know, the name Abhidharma kind of tells the whole story. It literally translates to concerning the teaching, but it came to be known as the higher or further teaching. It's considered the third major basket of the Buddhist canon, and it really represents this new scholastic movement that wanted to map out the nuts and bolts of our experience.
The best way to think about the difference is this. The Buddha's original discourses, the sutras, are like profound conversations or stories. They use everyday language and metaphors that you have to interpret. Abhidharma, on the other hand, is like the technical manual. It uses precise, analytical terms that are meant to be totally explicit, leaving no room for ambiguity.
And that absolute drive for precision leads us straight to the core project of Abhidharma, this revolutionary idea of deconstructing all of conscious experience into its most fundamental building blocks, which they called dharmas.
Now here's a really important point we have to get straight. Usually, when we hear the word Dharma with a capital D, we're talking about the Buddhist teaching, the ultimate truth. But Abhidharma uses the word in a very specific and plural way.
So, in the world of Abhidharma, dharmas are the ultimate constituents of reality. But, and this is the key, they are not things. They're momentary, psychophysical events. Think of them like the pixels of your consciousness. Each one flashes into being and vanishes instantly, but together they create the illusion of a solid, continuous world.
And the level of detail they went into is just staggering. I mean, look at this. The Theravada school, for example, didn't just say, there's a mind. They broke it down into this incredibly detailed taxonomy, identifying 52 different types of associated mental events, things like joy, anger, attention, plus 28 types of material phenomena. They wanted to classify every possible texture of experience.
Now, when you analyze the world this closely, you arrive at the most mind-blowing conclusion of the Abhidharma, the idea of radical momentariness. This takes the Buddhist concept of impermanence and cranks it up to 11.
So just how fleeting are these moments? Well, according to some texts, a single moment, or a kshana, lasts for about 0.13 milliseconds. That is unbelievably fast. It means that the stable, solid world you think you're living in is actually a high-speed illusion, just a ridiculously fast stream of these tiny, discrete events. And even within that tiny fraction of a second, each dharma has a complete life cycle. The Theravada school described it as having 3 phases. A phase of arising, where it pops into being, a phase of enduring, where it persists for an instant, and a phase of ceasing, where it vanishes completely to make way for the next one. A tiny birth, life, and death in every moment.
As you can probably imagine, this radical model of reality wasn't exactly accepted overnight. It was hugely controversial and sparked centuries of really intense philosophical debates between the different Buddhist schools. They were all trying to grapple with the massive implications.
And the problems they had to solve were huge. I mean, think about it. If every moment disappears completely, how can we have memories of the past? How could an action I take now possibly have an effect later on? These weren't just fun thought experiments. They had to be solved for the whole system to make any sense.
One of the biggest arguments was about time itself. You had the Sarvastivada school, whose name literally means all things exist, arguing that dharmas had to be real in the past, present, and future for causality to work. But then you had schools like the Theravada who pushed back, saying, no way, only the present moment is real. For them, the past is gone and the future isn't here yet. It's a fundamental disagreement about what is real.
So you might be asking, why go through all this trouble? What's the point of all this insanely complex philosophy? Well, it wasn't just an intellectual exercise. It all had a very practical purpose, to serve as an owner's manual for the mind.
Right. The ultimate goal here was liberation from suffering. The Abhidharma is designed to be a detailed map for meditators. The idea is that if you train your mind, you can start to see these dharmas arising and passing away directly. You can witness impermanence moment by moment. And when you see firsthand just how fluid and constructed everything is, it starts to wear away at that core belief we all have in a solid, permanent self.
The scholar Rupert Gethin put it perfectly. He said, try to grasp the world of the Abhidhamma and it runs through one's fingers. And that's it, right there. That's the feeling. It describes a reality that is fundamentally ungraspable, dynamic, and constantly flowing.
And that leaves us with one final massive question to chew on. If every single part of our experience, every thought, every emotion, every sensation, is just a rapid-fire stream of impersonal fleeting events, then who or what is the self that we're so convinced is in here experiencing it all?